I need to do this for my family. This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point, but I've got to do something.
This is a story of Prince Harry of the royal family, was born a prince, but never meant to be a prisoner. For Harry, duty was written in blood, tradition was law, and love? Love was a risk the monarchy couldn't afford, until one woman changed everything. And when history began to repeat itself, Harry faced a choice, the crown or the family he swore to protect. Please hit like and subscribe as we bring you more update on the royal crib. Prince Harry was born into a world of duty, a life charted out long before his first breath, written not in ink, but in bloodline and expectation. From the moment Prince Harry opened his eyes in the gilded halls of royalty, the world watched, not as a child, but as a symbol, a future soldier, a representative of a monarchy, a headline waiting to happen. But long before the interviews, the tabloid storms, and the exile from the palace gates, he was just a boy walking behind his mother's coffin. The cameras didn't blink then either. Years passed, and Harry wore the mask well, the charming smile, the ceremonial uniform, the carefully chosen words. But beneath it all was a quiet war, a war between duty and identity, between the man he was raised to be and the man he was becoming. Then he met her. Meghan wasn't from that world. She didn't carry a title, but she carried strength. She didn't come with protocol, but she came with grace. And in her, Harry found something the palace had never offered him: peace. Not just quiet, but the kind of peace that makes you breathe again. At first, he thought the system could bend, that love could soften centuries of hierarchy and control. But instead, he watched the woman he loved be dissected by headlines, demonized for simply existing. He saw history repeat itself, another woman, vulnerable and alone, becoming the target of a machine too powerful to fight with silence. And in that silence, he made a decision, one that would shock the world, divide his family, and reshape royal history. "I need to do this for my family," he said.
I need to do this for my family. This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point, but I've got to do something.
Getting away from the UK press, because the press is, is everywhere, or was a move because you weren't getting enough support from the firm?
It was both. But for my own mental health, for my wife's, and for Archie's as well, because I could see where this was headed.
They didn't want him to be a prince or a princess, not knowing what the gender would be, which would be different from protocol, and that he wasn't going to receive security.
What?
It was really hard. Look, I was really ashamed to say it at the time, and ashamed to have to admit it to Harry, especially, because I know how much loss he's suffered. But I knew that if I didn't say it, that I would do it, and I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
The way that I saw it was, there is a way of doing things, but for us, for this union and the specifics around her race, there was an opportunity, many opportunities, for my family to show some public support.
Did you think she was well received in the beginning?
Yes, far better than I expected. But my grandmother has been amazing throughout. My father, my brother, Kate, and all the rest of the family, they were really welcoming.
Your relationship with your father? Is he taking your calls now?
Yeah, he is. There's a lot to work through there. I feel really let down because he's been through something similar. He knows what pain feels like. My father and my brother, they are trapped. They don't get to leave. And I have huge compassion for that.
Hold up.
There's
Stop
several
right now.
There are several conversations.
There's a
about
conversation with you,
with Harry,
about how dark your baby is going to be?
potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh.
That conversation I'm never going to share. But at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked.
Can you tell us what the question was?
No, I'm not comfortable sharing that.
Okay.
He didn't mean the one in Buckingham. He meant the one he was trying to build. The moment Harry spoke those words, "I need to do this for my family," it was more than a statement. It was a line drawn in centuries of sand. Because for most people, family means warmth, safety, unconditional love. But in the halls of royalty, family often meant something colder. It meant duty. It meant silence. It meant sacrificing your truth to preserve a carefully curated myth. He had watched the cost of that silence. He had watched it claim his mother. Diana was once the most photographed woman on earth, not because she sought the spotlight, but because the world wouldn't let her hide. And when she cried for help, the walls of the palace muffled her voice. They said, "This is how it works." They said, "You must be strong." But they forgot that strength without compassion becomes a prison. Harry never forgot the sound of the gates closing behind her, the way she looked back one last time. And now, all these years later, he saw the same pain shadowing Meghan's eyes, the subtle way she gripped his hand in public, the forced smiles, the composure she wore like armor. At night, she would break down in whispers, too afraid to cry loud enough for the walls to hear. And that's when Harry knew. He would not be the next in line to pretend. He would not bow to the press while his wife was hunted. He would not wear medals earned from silence. If protecting his family meant losing everything he'd known, so be it. Because legacy was no longer about titles. It was about survival. He wasn't walking away from royalty. He was walking toward fatherhood, husbandhood, manhood, not in exile, in purpose. The world watched in stillness on that March evening in 2021. It wasn't just an interview, it was a reckoning. For the first time in modern royal history, a senior member of the monarchy sat down and spoke plainly, without the filter of palace press officers or rehearsed royal statements. Across from Oprah, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle shared more than just experiences. They unveiled the unspoken truths behind the golden gates. When Harry said, "I need to do this for my family," the simplicity of it cut through centuries of inherited silence. For many watching, it was a startling reminder that behind the royal titles and designer gowns were two people, a husband and a wife, who had been cornered by a machine far larger than them. The machine wasn't just the media, it was the institution, the invisible network of rules, traditions, and silences that had protected the monarchy for generations, often at the expense of its members. Meghan revealed how dark things had truly gotten. She spoke, with shaking restraint, about the moments she no longer wanted to be alive, about how her cries for help were met with rejection, because seeking mental health care would reflect poorly on the crown. It was raw, it was painful, it was honest, and when Harry heard that from his wife, when he saw her slipping away in the same quiet way his mother once had, he knew. He wasn't just saving Meghan, he was saving his son from growing up in a lie, from learning that silence was noble and suffering was the price of duty. In that moment, Harry didn't leave the royal family. He reclaimed the definition of what family truly meant. To the outside world, it looked like betrayal, a prince stepping back, walking away from centuries of lineage and ceremony. But to Harry, it was something else entirely. It was breaking a cycle. He had seen what that cycle did to his mother. Diana's life had been split between smiling in public and suffering in silence. She had no guidebook for navigating the brutality of royal expectation alongside personal vulnerability. And when she fell, the institution closed ranks, not to protect her, but to protect itself. Harry remembered the headlines, the flashbulbs, the relentless invasion. He remembered the way grief was never private, and when he looked at Meghan pregnant, fragile, and drowning under the same tide, he made a decision that generations before him might never have dared to consider. Enough. He did not want Archie to grow up seeing his mother cry behind closed doors. He didn't want his child to learn how to fake a smile for the press while breaking inside. He wanted something the royal system could never offer: a childhood with peace, a home where race would never be a whispered topic, a future where his family could define their own worth, not have it assigned by bloodlines and tabloids. Leaving wasn't giving up royalty, it was redefining leadership. Harry didn't do it with anger, he did it with clarity. He wasn't burning bridges, he was building boundaries, healthy ones, necessary ones. And for Meghan, who had faced racism, isolation, and institutional indifference, it wasn't about escape, it was about survival. Together, they weren't walking away from responsibility. They were walking toward something greater: honesty, safety, and a future built on truth, because no title was worth losing each other. After they stepped away from royal duties, the headlines came fast. Words like rogue, runaway, disgrace. For some, the idea of a prince choosing love over lineage was a betrayal of everything the monarchy stood for. But Harry had never been interested in preserving a broken system. He was interested in protecting what mattered. As the storm of public opinion raged, Harry and Meghan quietly built something new. Not a palace, not a kingdom, but a life. One where purpose could breathe, where causes were chosen, not assigned, where their voices weren't muted behind palace walls, but used to raise awareness for mental health, racial justice, and compassion. They launched a foundation, they signed deals, they told stories not for profit, but for healing. Stories that reflected real lives, the ones who suffer silently and deserve to be seen. And through it all, they remained together. Each time Harry looked at his son, he was reminded of why he made that choice. Archie's smile wasn't framed by palace portraits. It was framed by freedom, by love, by a father who refused to repeat the mistakes of his past. That legacy, not the crown, not the throne, would be Harry's true inheritance. When he said, "I need to do this for my family," he wasn't just protecting Meghan, he was honoring his mother. He was raising his child. He was healing the boy who once walked behind a coffin in silence. Because the loudest way to change history is to live differently. And for the first time in his life, Prince Harry wasn't living for the world's expectations. He was living for his family.